And welcome to another episode of the Tar Heels Insider Podcast right here on SI. I'm your host, Grant Chachere, bringing you all the latest news in regards to UNC athletics. Of course, I am the lead beat writer, and we're 2 days away from game week today. And by the way, happy College Football Saturday, everyone. Just want to announce that. Saw a really good game between Texas and Ohio State. Very defensive minded. Of course, I kind of expected that with two guys who are starting for the first time, and Julian Sayin is it Sayin or Sayin? I think it's Sayin of Ohio State. And then, of course, we had Arch Manning. Arch did not look good today. But I expected that. I mean, both guys are first year starting quarterbacks. That was a big time environment. That stuff happens. But overall, great defensive performance by both Ohio State and Texas. But anyway, it just sucks that North Carolina doesn't play today. But we get a whole day reserved. We get a whole day reserved to ourselves. Or y'all. I'm not a fan of course, I'm covering the team. We all, the whole city of, the whole town of Chapel Hill, and really just North Carolina itself will get all the spotlight on Monday night when it takes on TCU. And in the last podcast, we previewed TCU's offense. Now we're going into TCU's defense. And before I get to that, make sure to follow us on Twitter at Tar Heels on SI. You can also follow me on Twitter as well. My Twitter handle is actually right there in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen. And also make sure to go follow the Facebook page on Facebook as well. But now let's get to TCU's defense. So TCU's defense was pretty good. It was pretty decent, right? In years past, really just if you look at Sonny Dykes in general, if you look at his whole head coaching resume, most of the times his defense aren't great, right? Or they're just downright terrible. Actually, one year in 2014, they allowed the most passing yards in NCAA history. I'm not sure if that record has been broken since then, but they broke the record, right? It was not a very good – he's never really had good defenses. However, since he's come to TCU, they've greatly improved the defense. I mean, it really last season was a great example of that. They hired Andy Avalos, who is a highly respected defensive play caller in his own right, kind of similar to Steve Belichick, except the difference between Steve Belichick and Andy Avalos is, Steve often coached under his dad for most of his career. Like, there's only been 1 year where he did not coach under his dad, and that was when he was at Washington last year. But you really got to show what he was fully capable of without his father. Andy Avalos kind of, stereotypical head coaching career. Went to different places, was a successful defensive coordinator, and then eventually became a head coach. He actually was the head coach of Boise State, but he got let go because, he didn't meet expectations. It wasn't like his tenure at Boise State was bad, but he just didn't meet expectations. Actually, I think they fired him right before the Mountain West Conference Championship, if I remember correctly. And, what I'm saying? Like, it wasn't like he was a bad coach. I mean, his record, actually, no, let me rephrase that. He got fired. After going 5-5, and then they fired him with like 2 games to go. Or no, it was 2 games ago. I think they were 5-5 against Fresno State, and then they won like 4 straight games, including the Mountain West Conference Championship. And then so he just didn't meet expectations. Like, overall, his tenure at Boise State was not bad. I mean, he went 22-14 with a. And they went to the conference title game in 2022. So it wasn't like he was a bad head coach at Boise State, but it just didn't work out. But he's a hell of a defensive play caller, right? His defenses were great at Boise State. His defense was great at Oregon. When he was defensive coordinator there for 2 years. And then he was the head coach of Boise State for 3 years, 2021 through 2023. And then last year he became the defensive coordinator of TCU. So in 2023, TCU allowed 408 yards per game, 155 yards on the ground, and 254 yards through the air, right? And And that was good for 100th in total defense. They were in the hundreds in total defense. And then they were 110th in passing yards per game. When Andy Avalos took over, those numbers improved. They averaged 345.6 yards allowed, right? So they went from 100th to 45th in total defense. And if you look at the passing defense, they were 110th in 2023, as I just said. They improved from 110th to 23rd in the country. So they had a top 25 passing defense. So this is a pretty good defense. And they got some decent players returning, right? And let's kind of go over it. So defensive line. You got the Deal brothers, Marcus Deal and Devin Deal. Devin Deal is the older brother of Marcus. Devin Deal was in honorable mention all Big 12 selection. And last season, he had 46 tackles, 9.5 tackles for loss, and 5.5 sacks. Both of those were team highs. Marcus Deal, which is his younger brother, he's a nose guard, 6'5", around 330. Big boy, all right? Marcus Deal is a returning starter, like his brother, and had 21 tackles, 5.5 tackles for loss, and his sack. Also can't forget to mention Onzo Dimbu. He was a Washington State transfer, and he had a great year last year as a defensive tackle. 24 tackles, 7 tackles for loss, and 6 sacks. So he's a highly effective pass rusher, and he can disrupt. He could be a disruptor at the line of scrimmage. And also Zach Chapman, the defensive end opposite of Devin Deal. He played in all 13 games, but he didn't start in any. But he had 24 tackles, 3 tackles for loss, and 3 sacks, which his sack total is tied for second in regards to returning sack leaders, right? Then you go over the linebacker, Nnamdi Obiazor. He's an experienced starter, 1,900 snaps over the course of 3 seasons. He's also a great tackler. He had an 85.9 PFF tackling grade. So he's a very effective tackler. And over his career, he's had 214 tackles, 13 tackles for loss, 6.5 sacks, an interception, and 6 pass breakups. And last season, 81 tackles, 6.5 tackles for loss, 2.5 sacks, an interception, 2 pass breakups, and a forced fumble. Caleb Alarms-Orr, he also has had over 1,000 defensive snaps at both Cal and TCU. So last year, he transferred from Cal to TCU. Effective pass rusher, 81.2 pass rush grade in the year 2024. He also had 54 tackles, 4.5 sacks, and 2 sacks. And he finished 6th. He finished 6th on the team in tackles, right? He had 54 tackles, which was 6th on the team. And he didn't start a single game. So that's a great level of production for a guy who was more of a rotation player than anything else. Well, actually, he was a rotation player. He didn't even get a start. So imagine once he gets to start. And then the year before in 2023, where he was at Cal, he actually led the Bears with 92 tackles and was the second team All Pac-12 player. Then you look over at the defensive backfield, Bud Clark. He's been there forever, right? Bud Clark was a senior in high school when, what was I, a freshman or sophomore in college? Yeah. I mean, he's been playing at TCU forever, right? Since 2020. So he will be a 6-year senior. He was an all Big 12 second team selection last season, 67 tackles, 3 interceptions, 6 pass breakups, and a forced fumble in 2024. And he also has 11 career interceptions. And by the way, this is his 3rd season as the team captain. So he is the bona fide team leader. He's the bona fide leader of the defense. I mean, a 3-time captain, that says a lot, right? And then you also can't forget about Avery Helm and Channing Canada, the 2 starting cornerbacks for TCU. But they really got a lot of depth at cornerback too, because also Elijah Jackson, who, by the way, was a teammate of Thaddeus Dixon. It was a teammate of Thaddeus Dixon last season. Well, him and Kamori House, they're all teammates at Washington, and he was actually a starter in 2023 when they went to the college football playoff, but he had to miss most of last season because of injury. So he'd be playing for TCU. Be very interesting because he might know a little bit too much about the North Carolina Tar Heels, considering the fact that he was teammates with both Kamari House and Thaddeus Sixon, and also, of course, he played under Steve Belichick. So, I mean, and also Jamal Johnson, he's the safety opposite of Bud Clark, too. Very experienced guy, senior. So, a lot of very, very experienced players on the defense side of the ball for TCU, similar to North Carolina. And I think this defense is a pretty good defense. Once again, they were 25th in pass defense 23rd in pass defense last year. However, they were 83rd in rushing defense. They allowed 160.5 yards per game. So this isn't like a world beater rush defense, but they do have a great pass defense. So for North Carolina, if you want to challenge TCU defensively, you have to run the ball effectively, right? And we all know that Freddie Kitchens wants to have a very physical offense, which means running the football. And you have a running quarterback, G. Lopez. So if UNC wants to win this game, they have to be physical. And I know it's going to be a little bit harder to do so. You're going to be without Austin Blasky. That's how it's going to be for the next month or so. And of course, you also have, we're not sure what the status of Chris O'Kelly is. So now there's some reports that are saying that he is could be ready to go for Monday. But once again, you got to wait until Monday for that to be official. But right, so as of right now, you're going to be without two of your stars on the offensive line, and that doesn't bode well, especially against the defensive line that is pretty experienced, right? And on top of that, it's not an ideal situation where you're losing two of your better offensive players, to be honest with you, right before this game, just because of the fact that these are two veteran guys. These are two guys that these coaches seem to really like. I mean, Chris O'Kelly was a team captain for Holy Cross last season. Austin Blasky, I would assume, is going to be a team captain this year, and he's seen as the leader of the offensive line. One of the few guys who stayed, especially after all the guys who left during the transfer portal. So that's not an ideal situation. Also going to affect your chemistry. You're already going to have somewhat of a chemistry issue already because of all the new players on this team. Now, the question is really for me, can UNC's pass defense be effective enough? Right. And I trust Gio Lopez, right? I really do. I think he's a great player. I think he's a guy who can help win UNC a lot of football games, especially now when you have all these questions. So it's great to have a guy that you don't really have a whole lot of questions about. However, can the receivers be productive enough? Can the running game be productive enough? Right? You have to, for starters, you have to have a physical running game. That's number one, which I've already explained. Number two, you have to be as multifaceted as possible, right? You can't just you can't really necessarily have I'm not saying you can't have a simple game plan, but you don't want to have a bland game plan where it's kind of like the same thing over and over again. Like, kind of mix it up a bit. Some run, some pass, some motion, stuff like that. And also, you don't want to be one-dimensional. Just try to be as multifaceted as possible. And three, you have to have the ability to throw the ball down the field. Gio Lopez is a very effective sorry about that. Gio Lopez is a very effective down the field thrower. I mentioned this before, and you've seen this in the articles I've written. He had a 91.4 PFF grade with throws for 20 or yards or more down the field. I'm not talking about throwing the football to a receiver at the 5-yard line and then he runs for another 20 yards. No. I'm talking about throwing it 20 yards or more down the field. And he had a 91.4 PFF grade. That's elite, right? Like, if you go on the PFF grades, it's in the blue. That's elite. So he's a very, very, very good down the field thrower. Can the receivers make enough plays? I think Jordan Shipp is ready to be the next guy. Kobe Payson has a lot of experience. I mean, there's some guys who are going to step up for UNC for sure. But you need to find ways to throw the ball down the field, right? Especially against the TCU pass defense, that's pretty good, right? I mean, it's 23rd in the country. So if you run the ball well against a TCU defense that has been suspect at trying to stop the run, you allows the DBs to kind of creep up a bit, and then of course you throw it over the top. So it'd be very interesting to see how Freddie Kitchens calls this game, especially against defensive coordinator that's really, really good. I mean, Andy Avalos is one of the better defensive play callers around, and it'd be very interesting to see what Freddie Kitchens is able to do. Vice versa, with Steve Belichick, the defensive play caller going up, UNC's defensive play caller going up against Sonny Dykes and Kendall Briles. I think that'll be those two are very interesting matches because you really you got two really good staffs on the other side who've been doing this for a very long time. Sonny Dykes is an offensive, I won't say savant, but everywhere he's gone, the offenses have been top 15 offenses, right? Especially throwing the ball down the field where they've often been top 10. Kendall Briles, same thing, son of a coach, son of Art Briles. Of course, Art Briles' name has been thrown in the mud for obvious reasons and, for good reasons. If you're very familiar with the Baylor scandal in the mid-2010s. But Art Briles is one of the best offensive minds ever, right? I mean, you still see a lot of his stuff being used today, like the wide splits. You're going to see Baylor being used in wide splits. I mean, not Baylor. TCU is going to be – so a lot of times you're going to see them in wide splits, and that comes from the Art Briles offense. Now they're going up against the Belichicks, right? Bill and Steve. So it'll be very, very interesting coaching matchup. But that's going to wrap up the podcast for today. I'm your host, Grant Chachere. Make sure to follow Tar Heels on SI on Twitter. Just look up Tar Heels on SI, and we should be one of the first things that pop up. Same thing with Facebook. Go follow our page on Facebook, North Carolina Tar Heels on SI. Also, if you're on Twitter, also make sure to go follow me on Twitter at Chachere Grant. It's in the bottom left-hand corner of my screen. And also make sure to go check out our website as well, si.com/college/UNC. No paywall, no subscription, and no bull. That'll wrap it up today. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you guys tomorrow.